Welcome to Motherhood Unstressed, a podcast for anyone who wants to let go of stress and anxiety, take their power back, and learn how to create a truly beautiful life. Each week, I'm speaking with amazing individuals who are experts in the field of entrepreneurship, fitness, nutrition, motherhood, sex, and so much more. I'm your host, Liz Carlisle. I'm a mom, a blogger, and a certified health coach. I'm obsessed with personal growth and change, and I've helped women all around the world regain alignment with what they truly value in life and remove the blocks preventing them from living their life to the fullest. If you're ready to stop living a half life and move fully into your power, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am so glad that you're here, especially because this week I'm sitting down with the amazing Mark Sisson. Mark is a New York Times bestselling author. He's a wildly popular blogger. He was a competitive athlete, and he also runs the company, The Primal Blueprint. So of course, we talk about all things health and nutrition. He has so much knowledge on that. But of course, on the show, I always have to get super deep with my guests, and I wanted to know his philosophy on how to live a truly beautiful life. And he revealed that it's all about being present, incorporating pleasure into life, and having fun in your work. And, you know, that alone, I think, is really valuable for you, the listener. And I also love how he stresses that it's never too late. It's never too late to take control of your health, and it's never too late to be present and grateful and really live life to the fullest. So I hope you enjoy the lessons that Mark shares, and I hope you enjoy the episode. This episode is sponsored by Four Sigmatic. This is the Finnish company providing you with amazing medicinal mushrooms to add to your coffee or hot water every single day. I like the chaga for the immune boosting properties. I love the cordyceps as a pre-workout, and it's also really good for libido, whether you're a man or a woman. And I like the lion's mane. It gives me mental focus. I'll add that to some hot water at like 2:30 in the afternoon, and I am focused and energized, and I don't need to be reaching for that chocolate, even though I really enjoy chocolate too. And I like the reishi at night before bed. So when I'm reading my book at night, I just have some hot tea and I add some reishi to it, and I just feel really relaxed. So if you use the code UNSTRESSED at checkout, you will save 15%. This episode is also sponsored by Motherhood Unstressed CBD supplements. Guys, I'm so proud of this. I can't wait to release it to you coming very, very soon. And CBDs, if you're not really sure what that is, it's cannabidiol. And we all have CBD in our body. It's called endocannabinoids. And when it comes from a plant, the hemp plant, it's called phytocannabinoids. So it's really a supplement to make sure that that supply in your body is at a good, stable level. And when it is, your body is in homeostasis. So you feel more grounded. You don't feel stressed. You don't feel anxious. It actually helps with so many other ailments. So you might want to check that out. Google that. And then I've also added ashwagandha, which is something that I've used for years to battle stress and anxiety and just feel more grounded and calm. And there's also green tea extract, which is a proven major antioxidant. So all of these things working together in the supplements to just give you a really great tool to help your body battle stress and anxiety. I really can't wait to share it with you. Coming soon. Lastly, this episode is sponsored by the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. This is the school that I went to for health coaching. It was honestly life-changing. I could go on and on, but it really, truly was. If you want to check out more about a class or the curriculum, just head on over to my website, Motherhood Unstressed. I've got all that there. And if you end up on a discovery call, just mention my name, Elizabeth Carlisle. You'll receive a host of goodies, including a Vitamix mixer and also $1,000 off tuition. Well, hey, Mark, I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I have admired your work for honestly a long time. And just to give our audience some context first about you, why don't you kind of give us a little bit of background about you and the events in your life that led you to being a best-selling author and entrepreneur?
Sure. I was always chasing longevity and performance from a very young age. I just was fascinated by the human body and what it could do. So I started running primarily as a means of getting to and from school when I was very young, and read some books on health and fitness, and sort of coincided with my running to school. It looked like the more I ran, the healthier my heart would be, and then I'd live longer. So that made good sense to me. So I sort of went down that path for quite some time. I read books on how to fuel for that activity, how to eat right, and it seemed conventional wisdom of the day was a diet based in complex carbohydrates. Well, a diet based in carbohydrates, some of which were complex.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I got I wound up being a fairly well trained runner from the work I was doing, and so I started entering track and field events and then road races, and kind of before I knew it, I was one of the top runners in the country at long distance, and finished fifth in the U.S. National Championships in the marathon in 1980. But I was sort of falling apart from all of the training I was doing and from the diet. The diet was we know now, was very inflammatory. And so I had all these injuries and itises and afflictions, and I'd get sick a lot, and I had tendonitis, and I had irritable bowel syndrome, and I was kind of a wreck. I could race fast, but I was kind of a wreck on the inside. And so I had to kind of pivot away from being a high-level athlete and kind of figuring out where I'd made mistakes and where I'd been listening to the wrong conventional wisdom, the wrong advice. And that led me down a path of self-exploration that's been 40 years now, but basically it's about uncovering ways in which I can achieve what I wanted. I can become still strong and fast and lean and fit and healthy, but without all that struggling and sacrificing, with all the calorie counting and the portion control and everything else that goes with it. And my research, I started to compile all this research over the years. Wrote my first book in 1982. It was actually on training for triathlons, but the research continued to pile up, and I started to see a pattern that if we ate more in the way our ancestors did, we followed that sort of ancestral pattern of eating and sleeping and sun exposure and play and movement, that we would be in a much better position to allow our bodies to express themselves. That would be a genetic sort of effect of allowing the recipe, the DNA recipe that we all have within us, to manifest itself into that strong, lean, fit, healthy individual that our genes want us to become. So my life way, my ideas sort of coalesced in a blog I started in 2006 called Mark's Daily Apple, and I would espouse all these ideas and put them out there, and some of them were really quite wacky in those days, not anymore. And ideas like fat is good for you, or that complex carbohydrates, and particularly grain, is probably bad for you, or that you can't, trying to lose weight through exercise is an impossible task. Butter is probably good for you. Saturated fat is not the cause of heart disease. All these things, cholesterol is not something that you necessarily need to worry about. All these things were really anti-conventional wisdom and kind of raised a lot of eyebrows, but attracted a big audience with Mark's Daily Apple. And within a year or two of starting that blog, I had enough information, enough research compiled, and enough demand that I wrote a book called The Primal Blueprint. And that Primal Blueprint as a brand then sort of expanded into events, seminars, into food, into a coaching program, and a lot of other manifestations. But they're all sort of still based around this notion that we should be emulating our ancestors in how we eat and move.
I love that. I mean, it really took a lot of courage to, put yourself out there in that way, especially when most of the doctors and people out there were, saying the complete opposite. So what was really driving you in those moments to, because there couldn't have been that much research out there. I mean, was it just a inner knowing or intuition, or?
That's very interesting. Yeah, because it was an inner knowing. It was an intuition. And combined with a frustration. I'd never had a good experience with doctors in any of the relatively infrequent encounters I'd had with doctors. And I say something about the medical profession that I think is quite an indictment. Everyone has a bad medical story. Some people have a good one too, maybe two good stories, but everyone has a bad medical story, something that went wrong with themselves or with a family. It's just, if you bring your blood work to 10 different doctors and you'll get 10 different sort of evaluations of what you should be doing. One might say go vegetarian. One might say go vegan. One might say start exercising. One might say I'm going to put you on meds. One might say, well, this paleo thing sounds good. Let's do that. But there's no real answers here. There are just opinions. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to give my readers the information to allow them to make the kind of choices in their lives that they felt good about making because they had a little bit of a ground of being, a ground of understanding of how the body works, so that if they did make that choice, they sort of knew what they were getting into, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that's really at the core of it, because, a diet that works well for someone might be awful for another person. It really is bio-individual for each and every person.
Oh, that's that IIN coming in there.
How did you know?
That's good. Bio-individuality. That's Joshua's big thing. And I agree with it, I don't know when you took the course, but I'm a faculty member at IIN. One of my lectures got recorded and is shown there. So
I know. So for our listeners who aren't quite sure of paleo and primal living, can you give them a little primer on what it actually is? Just a basic overview so that we're all on the same page.
Sure. Well, paleo is still to this day sort of mostly a diet. So paleo is kind of this notion that we should, again, eat foods that our bodies evolved to eat, and therefore, mimicking the ancestral patterns of eating lots of vegetables, some meat, fish, fowl, eggs, nuts, seeds, things like that, avoiding sugars, processed grains, certainly industrial seed oils like corn oil, canola oil, soybean oil. And paleo is almost as much about what you eliminate, what you don't eat, as it is about what you do eat. Primal, my brand of paleo, the Primal Blueprint, is, yes, it adheres to that same eating strategy with some minor deviations. Like I've always allowed full-fat dairy, and paleo typically doesn't allow dairy. I've always allowed for a little bit of red wine. Paleo finally decided to allow some red wine recently. But also Primal is more a complete lifestyle. So Primal has always looked at how much sleep are you getting? Is it enough to not just repair the body, but keep stress hormones down? How much play are you engaging in? Because humans are designed to be playful animals, not just through growing up and not through adolescence, but through adulthood as well. What's your movement pattern like? Are you moving around a lot through lots of planes and ranges of motion throughout the day, not just going to the gym and doing one 45-minute workout, but are you moving all day long? I'm standing here, I'm at a stand-up desk doing this interview because I don't like to sit. So move around a lot at a low level of activity, mimicking our ancestral patterns. Lift heavy things once in a while, which in my case, if you're going to put it on a calendar or a schedule, would mean go to the gym twice a week and lift weights. And then sprint once in a while. And that was sort of, again, an eyebrow raiser for a lot of people. Like, who would ever try to advise everybody to sprint once a week? But that's part of the ancestral pattern is to go all out for very short bursts of energy, raise the heart rate to a max heart rate, not for an hour, but for 30 seconds, 20 seconds or whatever, a couple of times in a workout. And that kind of mimics an ancestral pattern that the genes expect of us, which is once in a while to be scared to death and have to take action to either avoid getting killed or to chase after something for food or whatever that looks like. So we've had fun creating this, the 10 Primal Blueprint laws, which are basically laws that humans have abided by, successful humans and ones that evolved to where we are today. Through the millennia, eat lots of plants and animals, avoid toxic things, move around a lot at a low level of activity, get plenty of sleep, get plenty of play, avoid traumatic experiences to the best you can. In other words, don't put yourself in harm's way by, say, not wearing a seatbelt or smoking cigarettes all day long and things like that. So, they're pretty common sense laws when you kind of pare them all back, but they have this ancestral lens through which we kind of put them together. So long-winded answer to your question, Liz, but it's basically paleo is sort of mostly diet and primal is this complete lifestyle.
I love it. And I loved how you mentioned that you added in wine, because I read one of your blogs and it was all about the importance of pleasure in life. And I think someone would look at you and say, well, he's got to be so strict with his life and his workouts because he's incredibly fit at it. It's just unreal. Yeah. Like, you look better than guys in their 20s, like, hands down.
So, well, thank you.
Yeah. So talk to me about the role of pleasure and how you incorporate that and still be really healthy.
Well, so, at its essence, like, one of the things I realized after 20, 30 years of doing full-on endurance training was I never really had much fun while I was racing or training. It was really about managing discomfort. And it wasn't really that sort of pursuit. Long distance running really isn't fun. You can get in the zone and you can sort of enjoy the experience and be out in nature, but it's not what I would call fun. So I sort of refocused a bunch of years ago, and I thought to myself, geez, I've had this hedonistic lifestyle for so long. It's not hedonistic, this monastic lifestyle for so long, that I want to start to engage in some more hedonistic experiences. And so we sort of changed the tagline of my company. It's now called Primal Blueprint, Live Awesome. And it's about crafting a life way that allows you to extract the greatest amount of pleasure, fulfillment, contentment, enjoyment from every moment possible. And whether that means enjoying your workouts more, in my case, I play ultimate Frisbee with 20-somethings. I'm having a blast the whole time. It's the toughest workout I do all week, and yet I never think, oh, geez, when's it going to be over? I'm thinking, oh, geez, it's going to be over too soon. I want to keep playing. It's about enjoying every bite of food you eat. People somehow assume that I'm sacrificing great tasting food for my health. I eliminate a lot of crap, a lot of bad stuff, some of which taste pretty good, but I have a huge list of foods that I eat that taste awesome. And I make sure that I enjoy every single bite of food I put in my mouth. And in fact, if you were to come up to me with some sort of a dry kale salad that you'd made and said, well, this is pretty healthy salad, Mark, I said, I'm not into it. Sorry. If it doesn't taste fabulous, if every bite doesn't taste fabulous, I'm not even interested. So I'm trying to find those moments, whether it's with my family, whether it's at work, whether it's with my employees, whether it's with a team on the Frisbee pitch, whether it's on a hike with friends or out on a paddleboard with friends, whether it's dining either alone or with other people. I'm looking for the pleasure in every possible moment. I'm looking to extract the greatest amount of enjoyment, contentment, fulfillment possible, because that's really why we're here. You can have these greater goals. You can have, my goal is I want to affect the lives of 100 million people. That's my goal. But in the process, I want to enjoy it. I don't want to wait until I either achieve that goal or not to be able to look back and go, well, I guess it's all worth it. I want the journey to be as exciting and more exciting, actually. And I want to be able to experience, as much as I can in real time without regretting the past and without fear of the future.
But I think you being that way, just being that way, is absolutely making a greater impact than if you were, this guy standing on a stage over here, like espousing all this wisdom. I mean, you having that essence and just living a life that way absolutely does more. But I'm really curious, when did you start to live that way? Do you remember, was there a moment where you were like, I'm going to start enjoying life and I'm going to start being present in all these moments?
Well, the first real epiphany I had was when I had kids. And so a couple of things happened. I stopped training hard because I had kids and I didn't want to, allocate my Saturdays to a 5-hour bike ride when I had young children. So I sort of got away from the really intense long distance training and started to think, well, how can I really enjoy my life and start playing? So I started playing with my kids. I also, one of the things I'm most proud of, and my kids will bring this up, is that the number of soccer practices and little league games that I coached or went to or refed or attended and brought them with me really was and they're 27 and 24, and they'll both tell me that was some of the most impactful, meaningful times for them, was that I would go do stuff with them. We would go to the beach and we would go boogie boarding. And they would be 3, 4, 5 years old, and we'd be out in the waves on boogie boards, all having a blast. And those are some of the most enjoyable, real moments of my life. And this is when my kids were younger. And I thought, well, geez, I mean, how come I can't? Why can't I do this all the time? I don't need to work 80-hour weeks to get where I want to be. I just need to work smarter, and I need to hire really great, smart people on my team, so that I'm not feeling compelled to take it all on myself. And so it was again a part of my natural evolution, my development as a human being over the years, to finally understand how important it was to play and how important it was to enjoy the moment. And then, you have kids. So, like your child is 3, and then like 2 years later, they're 18. At least that's what it feels like, right? I mean, it just goes by so fast. So anyway, I'm waxing too philosophical here, I think, but it was really important to me it was my kids that sort of brought that to my attention, that I needed to be able to be playful.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, so many people miss those moments. So many people miss that realization. I mean, I just interviewed my father. Actually, he was a colonel in the Marine Corps, on the subject of leadership. And I asked him, what makes a good leader? And he immediately diverted to talking about the relationship between the parent and the child, and how that is the most important relationship that you'll ever have, because your ability to embody what it means to be a good human and a good person, like, directly impacts them. And how good that relationship is just, it's so much, it's so important. I can't even put it into words. I'm going to start crying. And so when you just said that, I mean, you just got it, it clicked for you so early on when they were so little. And I think that it kind of reminds me of how you acted, when everyone's thinking some way about the medical profession, and you saw it and you went this way, I mean, it's a different way of thinking about so many different things.
Well, that's a different way of thinking for a lot of people, and yet it's the way I think we should think. I mean, I don't want to foist my ideas on everybody, but look, I grew up in the time when the dad went to work and didn't see the kids ever until dinner time, and then the kids went to bed. So there's like a 1 hour little window where dad came home from work and you ate dinner, and then you went to bed and did your homework or whatever. And it was, look, I mean, my dad dropped my mother off at the hospital to have me. Said, I'll pick you up in 3 days. I mean, that's, that was just what you did in those days. So we're in a different time right now, and I think it's really critical, because kids are having a really tough time with social media in particular, trying to figure out their place in the world. And so the more FaceTime they get with parents, and the more FaceTime they get with other family members, and the more team sports they play. I'm a big fan of team sports, interacting with other humans in real time, face to face, rather than on a 4-inch diameter or diagonal screen. So I don't think it's a novel way of looking at things. It's just we seem to be like skipping that part of raising children, skipping that over, and it's sad.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I hope everyone listening pays attention to that part alone. But getting back to what we were talking about before, I love your LGN. Your Look Good Naked. What are your key strategies for looking good naked? I've heard you talk about this before, so I think I kind of know what you're going to say. But what's something our listeners can start doing today to look better naked?
Yeah. Well, the focus of what I talk about in terms of diet all centers around a concept called metabolic flexibility. And metabolic flexibility basically means the ability or not to extract energy from different substrates in the body. So most of us cruise through life in this country dependent on carbohydrates all the time. And we never really develop the ability to burn fat, whether it's fat on our plate or fat on our hips or thighs or belly or whatever. And because we have access to food all the time, and particularly carbohydrates, we tend to get into this pattern of eating a meal that has carbohydrates. Insulin shoots up to try and deal with the glucose that's created as a result of those carbs. And then there's a rebound effect, and 2 hours later, 3 hours later, you're hungry again. So we typically have this pattern of breakfast. And for a lot of people, breakfast is, waffles or pancakes or toast or bagels or whatever. And then mid-morning snack, coffee break, and then lunch, sandwich, potato chips, French fries, and then an afternoon snack, and then a dinner, and then maybe something while watching TV. And so we're always constantly fueling ourselves and putting carbohydrate energy into our muscle cells, and then the excess gets converted to fat. But we never really give ourselves the ability to take that fat out of storage and burn it as fuel. And yet that's our default setting as human beings. We were born with this great ability to burn fat as fuel, because that's how we were able to survive long periods of time without eating over the millennia. So when I talk about looking good naked, it's about learning how to burn off your stored body fat and doing it in a way, again, that isn't restrictive, that is totally sustainable, that's a lifestyle that you can maintain, not just for the next 30 days while you're, trying to fit into that wedding dress, but for the rest of your life. And metabolic flexibility happens as a result of taking a look at your diet and eliminating refined sugars and sweetened beverages and cakes and candies and cookies and pies and the things that, we all sort of know we shouldn't be eating a lot of, if at all. Eliminating breads and cereals and things like that, and eating lots of vegetables and clean sources of protein and healthy fats. And when you do that, the body gets a message. It says, well, we're not going to be getting this cheap carbohydrate fuel in vast quantities. Let's start burning off some of our own stored body fat. Let's use that for fuel when we're not eating. One of the most amazing effects of all this is you finally get a hold of a control of appetite, hunger, and cravings. So most people live their lives in some form or another thinking about what the next meal is going to be. They're like, right, lunch was great. What's for dinner? Dinner was good. What's for dessert? And it's just a weird way to think that, we have access to all this food and all we do is think about food and what's next. So the idea about developing metabolic flexibility and getting a hold of your appetite, cravings, and hunger includes this cool ability to tap into your body fat stores whenever you don't eat. I've got a new book coming out next year, and one of the basic premises of it is all the good stuff happens in your body when you're not eating. All the cool stuff, all the repair, all the access to the energy stored in the fat cells, all that stuff happens when you're not eating. When you're eating, it's pro-inflammatory, you get sluggish, you get all these hormonal responses in real time, and it's only serving to put coal into the coal bin for future reference. But all the good stuff happens when you're not eating. So with that in mind, you arrive at a point where you go, well, okay, what's most people, again, Liz, is crazy. Most people think about how much food they can eat. Like, what can I get away with eating? What's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight?
Zero pleasure in that.
Yeah. What's the biggest serving of this steak that I can eat and not feel like a glutton or pig or not feel guilty or not feel so? What's the biggest piece of cheesecake I can have for dessert? Because they cut me a big slice of cheesecake that must be a serving, right? It's a serving. So if I finish it, it's just one serving. So we live our lives, many of us, eating way more food than we ought to. Well, once you get a hold of your appetite, hunger, and cravings, and once you realize that 3 bites of cheesecake is plenty for most people, and after that, now we're just sort of having a contest to see what sort of a glutton you can be. So instead of seeing what's the most amount of food you can eat, I did an experiment a bunch of years ago, and I thought, what's the least amount of food I can eat? Maintain muscle mass, maintain energy, never get sick, most importantly, never be hungry. Mm. And because hunger ruins everything. Hunger is the sort of thing that makes every program fail. Well, I realized it's like 30% fewer calories than I thought I needed to get through a day. So most of my life, I was eating more calories than I needed. I was assuming I needed it to maintain muscle mass and to maintain energy and all this stuff. And because I could get away with it, because I wasn't gaining weight. But the fact that I wasn't gaining weight didn't mean I wasn't doing something less than healthful for my body. Our tendency to overeat once in a while is probably an okay thing. Our brains are wired through evolution to overeat, because food was so rare a million years ago, or 50,000 years ago, or 10,000 years ago. Food was so rare that we're wired to overconsume. And then we have this amazingly cool ability to take excess calories and convert it into stored energy that we carry around with us on our body. I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, how cool is that? Problem is, we're surrounded by food all the time now. We're still wired to overeat. And unless we train our bodies to build the metabolic machinery to start burning fat, to make ketones, to offset the need for the brain to have glucose, we're trapped in this vicious cycle of eating, overfilling, and then ironically getting hungry again 3 hours later, because we haven't trained ourselves to take the fat out of storage and burn it for fuel.
I was just going to say, I mean, I hear all the time from people, they're hungry, they're trying to lose weight, they're on all these different diets, but they're miserable and they're starving. And you're right. It's just like this cycle. Do you think the cycle is more like food addiction, or do you think it's more like a mental, an emotional attachment to certain foods? I mean, what do you think is really holding people back or keeping them?
So it depends on the macronutrient breakdown of your diet. If you are eating lots of carbs and yet you're still trying to cut calories, it'll fail every time, because you'll just be raising blood sugar when you have the carbs, and then you won't eat, and then you'll be hungry again, and then you have more carbs. And if you have a diet that eliminates the simple sugars and the sweetened beverages and the pies, cakes, candies, cookies, bread, cereal, pasta, and all that stuff, and you come down to just eating real food, you'll develop this metabolic machinery that will be good at burning fat. When you do that, when the body becomes good at taking fat out of storage, it doesn't care. It doesn't know whether the fat in your bloodstream right now headed to your muscles came from a plate of food or from your butt. It just doesn't care, because it's so good at accessing that fat. So when you get to that point where you are good at burning fat and you're comfortable burning ketones in the brain, because ketones are sort of this super fuel that we all make as a byproduct of fat metabolism. It's just that most of us never build the metabolic machinery to be able to burn those ketones. When you get to that point, you literally, it's like, I know people who have refined this to such a science, they eat once a day. And it's not like they force themselves. It's like they don't need to eat. They're not hungry. They eat once a day. I have a friend who's done this for 10 years. I go, dude, you must have to be really mindful of what you eat when you have dinner at like 6 o'clock. And I'm thinking in my mind, you got to be mindful to not overeat. And he goes, yeah, I got to be mindful to eat enough, because I'm only eating one meal a day. And this is a person who would never, ever, ever complain of being hungry. He's so good at burning off his own stored body fat. And when your body has energy, those hormones that would normally control hunger subside. So hunger in that case is a very physiological response to retraining your body to be good at burning fat, to literally reconfigure, I call it rewiring your genes, to be good at burning fat. Now, in some cases, everybody has a sweet tooth. It's just the degree to which that sweet tooth manifests itself that gets us in trouble, right? So I have a sweet tooth. I mean, I could easily devour a half gallon of ice cream right now. And I did, by the way, every night for almost 10 years when I was a runner. Half gallon.
Oh my God.
After a big day of eating. But I've lost that craving. I still, if somebody gives me something sweet, I love it. And I am tempted to consume more, but I also know what happens if I eat more than 3 or 4 bites of it. I have a physiologic response. My heart starts racing. I start sweating. Body temperature goes up. I get an insulin hit, an insulin rush. I maybe don't sleep that night if it's a dinner time, a post-dinner excess of dessert, shall we say.
Mhm.
So I know what happens, and I'm like not willing to, like, I always ask myself, is 5 hours of discomfort worth 3 minutes of gustatory pleasure? And the answer is, when you put it like that, no.
Wow, that's great. That's so important. And your company is just blowing up. I mean, you have all these different, different types of foods and bars and like all these amazing products. You have a podcast, you have everything, like so much going on. How do you stay grounded through it all? I mean, this is just, and it's really expanding like exponentially, I feel like.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. No, we're one of the fastest growing food companies in the country right now. We're in 9,000 stores. We have 25 products right now. We have 13 salad dressings, 3 flavors of mayonnaise. We've got some barbecue sauces coming on board. We've got a bunch of bars. We have collagen bars, and then we have a new one, sort of a keto bar that's just out of this world. Again, made with all natural ingredients. So we're really excited about that. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm having fun doing this, so that's how I stay grounded. My big thing with my company is I have 75 employees now, so I have a really good team, and my C-suite, my executive level employees are really great. So they do a lot of the heavy lifting, if you will. And so I spend a lot of time in the R&D lab. Like I'm doing research and development lab. It's my kitchen, right? So I'm, mixing and matching and saying, well, I'd really like to have this kind of sauce, or I'd like a steak sauce that would rival some of the top brands on there, but be 100% organic and 100% unsweetened. And then let's do it. I don't know if you're familiar with our ketchup, but we just released our ketchup. It's the first ketchup that checks all 3 boxes. It's 100% organic. It's 100% unsweetened, and it tastes great. There have been others that have tried to do 2 boxes, organic and taste good but sweetened, or organic and sweetened but or unsweetened but tastes like crap.
Yeah.
I mean, ours is like, we're thrilled. We gave Whole Foods an exclusive for the first 90 days, and it's been just, they've been killing it, crushing it, as the kids say today with that.
Ketchup is probably my favorite condiment, so I can't wait to try it.
Yeah. And kids love it too, which is like the main thing.
Oh yeah, my boy's 3 and 6. I'll definitely get it for them. So what's next? I mean, you've got all these products coming out. What's next for Primal Blueprint?
So we always have new products. I've got a book coming out next year, sort of an anti-aging longevity book. I'll feature more of my wife in there, in addition to myself. I'm just, I tell people I've been working for 50 years now. Actually more than 50 years. I tell my kids I've been working 40 hours a week since I was 12. So I had a full-time job mowing lawns in the summertime. And then I went when I was 12 and 13. Then when I was 14, I painted houses full-time in the summertime. And so I've always worked hard. And I think the last 2 years I probably worked harder. I shouldn't say harder. I've worked more than in the rest of my entire life. And yet I've had more fun doing it. And that's huge for me, is to have fun doing this and to feel like I'm making an impact in people's lives. Certainly the information I've disseminated over the years with the books and the blog has helped millions of people. But offering a food product that, whether or not you ever heard of paleo or ever heard of primal or ever heard of me, you pick up the bottle and you go, wow, these are really clean ingredients. I think I'll try this. That's I think how I get to the next level of affecting 100 million people.
Man, so what drives you? I mean, what drove 12-year-old Mark to work all summer? I mean, is it the same drive? Like what's pushing you constantly?
Well, 12-year-old Mark just wanted some spending money. And then, 17-year-old Mark put himself through college painting houses.
Wow.
And then 22-year-old Mark didn't go to med school because he was too busy painting houses to support a world running tour for 3 years in training for the Olympics in 1980. So I've always had a strong entrepreneurial drive. And then, I guess the training that I did with marathoning at first and then ultimately with triathlon kind of gave me, a mindset that if I put my mind to it, I could get it done. And the food company, which is, again, one of the most successful food companies to come along in decades, It's only 3.5 years old. So it's really it's a 40-year overnight success story is what it is. Because I spent 10 years building the brand Primal before I ever launched the food company. But there's a lot of credibility that has gone with my teachings and my seminars and my books and my blog and things like that.
Well, and I'm sure that's why it is so successful, because you have done all the groundwork. You have built trust with your following and your audience. I mean, you literally lived that kind of life. So I would buy that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, if we could put a bow on this interview, what do you want our listeners to remember about true health and nutrition?
I mean, I think the first point to make is that it's never too late. So whether you're, just out of college and don't know what you're going to do with your life, or you're a midlife crisis, empty nester mom, or you're 75 years old and you're facing immobility, it's never too late to take action to allow your genes to rebuild, renew, regenerate, recreate yourself. That's point number one. Point number two is, from there, it's just about the choices that you make. And as I said fairly early on, I view my job as a blogger and an author and a lecturer to just avail people of certain choices that'll probably get them to their goals, not just faster, but probably with a little bit more ease and grace than what they're currently undertaking. So the other part of that equation is that it may not be easy, but if you take some of these steps, if you take that first step, you will always progress more toward health than toward disease, if you're mindful about this, and if you have that awareness and create that education about how the body works.
Absolutely. So are you ready for our rapid fire questions?
Oh, geez, here we go.
They're not bad. Don't worry.
They're not bad.
Just fill in the blank here.
Okay.
True health is?
True health is joy.
I believe in?
I believe in myself.
I love that. I'm grateful for?
I'm grateful for so many things that I couldn't even begin to elucidate or to enumerate or to list them. And it's like every time I do a little gratefulness process, it's like, holy crap! I just go this. Like my mind starts filling with things. So you can't corral me with that one.
Love is?
Love is connection.
And what's something that you've learned in life that you wish someone would have told you earlier on?
If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. There's a lot behind that, but I mean,
I'm like waiting. No, that's good. That's good. And so if people want to find more out about you and get all into Primal Blueprint, how do they find you?
marksdailyapple.com is the blog. If you go to primalblueprint.com, you'll find all of our products and a little description of everything there. Books are on Amazon. Also, products are in 9,000 stores now. So we're in, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Raley's, Wegmans, Kroger, Safeway, Public, Costco. We're all over the place. So check out the products. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and just everything. I mean, we covered parenting and nutrition and health. I mean, it was beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, appreciate it. My pleasure.
Guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you loved this episode I did with Mark. He's amazing. He's so knowledgeable. He's so wise. Just the way that he's lived his life, I think, is an example for anyone. So by him sharing his story, I feel uplifted, and I hope you do too. If you love this episode, please don't hesitate to leave it a 5-star review on iTunes or share it with a friend. You just press those 3 dots on Apple Podcasts, and you can share it via email or text. And that's really how the show has grown. It's just by sharing it. So thank you, and see you next week. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Motherhood Unstressed CBD supplements. These are the supplements that are going to help you battle stress and anxiety in a natural way that's going to make you feel grounded and calm and ready to take on the day. I'd also like to thank our sponsor for Sigmatic. These are the medicinal mushrooms. I add them to my coffee every single morning. I never miss a morning, and I feel amazing all day long. The cordyceps are amazing for energy and sex drive. The chaga is amazing for immunity, and the reishi is amazing for sleep. So if I want to be able to sleep at night, I just add it to my tea, and I'm good to go. I also like to thank the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. This is the school that I went to. I really can't thank them enough. I mean, going to that school absolutely changed the course of my life. Like, I already was super interested in health and wellness before joining. I think that's a pretty normal thing for a student and why they would want to join. But what I learned ended up opening my mind in so many different ways and also gave me a really intense business acumen. So learning about business and marketing through them also was incredibly helpful and is really the reason why I'm doing all the things that I'm doing now is because I was exposed to amazing teachers and I had the support there that I needed. So if you're interested in checking them out, head on over to my website. I've got a sample class you can look at. I've got a sample curriculum. And if you do end up on a discovery call with IAN, mention my name, Elizabeth Carlisle, and you will get almost $1,000 off, if not more, from your tuition. They work a lot with affiliates and referrals. So let me be that for you and save you some money and help you on your path to learning more about health and wellness and then being able to create a ripple effect in the lives of others.